My name is Joe Saucedo. I work at Loyola University Chicago, currently the director of our Department of Student Diversity and Multicultural Affairs. Yeah, I mean, there's a lot I would say about the conference. For starters, I wasn't as familiar with bringing theory to practice, so I think it's been a great education just to understand, like, what is this organization all about and how do we take that information back to my campus and start talking about more actively conversations around well-being. I think a lot of times as a student affairs educator, we get wrapped up into talking about student success, very broadly speaking, without realizing well-being, I think, is fundamental to that success, right? Like, how are students, how are staff and faculty even, doing in terms of our own positive mental health and well-being. So I think some of the takeaways, just in terms of what I'm taking back to Loyola after this conference, is ways to really, I think, go deeper in collaborating with multiple stakeholders at Loyola. So thinking about our students, yes, but our faculty partners, campus partners, colleagues, that may also not really, their day-to-day, language doesn't often include intersectionality. It certainly does in my work and working in multicultural affairs. We talk about intersectionality, the crossroads of all these different lived experiences and identities. So I'm very familiar, our staff is familiar, but I think across the board at my institution, I find that there's a lot of lack of awareness of what that truly means, and it's important for us to see the connection between that understanding of multiple identities, lived experiences, and then how that translates into how is the student doing in terms of their health and academic achievement. The climate, I think I would say, politically, socially, economically, what have you, I find it discouraging on one hand that people continue to be pigeonholed and put into boxes, right, based on identities that folks might assume that others have. I see it a lot in higher education, and I think a conference like this where we're able to hear from scholars, I think of Dr. Laura on Wednesday speaking about, this isn't a novel concept, right? Like, this is something, this idea of intersectionality, multiplicity of identities. It's not new, but I think there is, as she described it, an awakening of understanding that this is important, that this is who we are, that it's not fair to put people or force people to put ourselves into rigid boxes of identity, and how that's crucial. I think if we're ever to develop some solutions, right, to social issues like poverty, like disparities in healthcare, services, disparities in social inequalities in our own education system. I think if we're ever to develop solutions that can work, we really need to respect that we're all coming in with multiple aspects of our own lived experience and identity. Excuse me, I see a lot of progress, in the K-12 sector. I think, our public school system definitely is in need of a lot of repair and healthy solutions, but I think I've been very encouraged. I've been here for 6 years. I'm a transplant to Chicago, and working all those 6 years at Loyola, we're an institution that really prides ourselves in respecting the wholeness of a person. So I think this theme of the conference is really integral to the work of my institution. But even then, in spite of that being a part of our core values, this idea of respecting intersectionality, I think we can still do better in terms of sharing that knowledge, in terms of inviting our students and our populations to hear from them. What I've really appreciated about this conference is that it's been quite accessible to not just the staff and the faculty that work in higher ed, but I would say students, right? To make this conference available for free to our students, I think sends a really positive message that we want to hear from our students, and we want them at the table in terms of coming up with these positive solutions to minimizing, ending, hopefully, inequalities that exist.